Season 1 of Eddy is weird. Wait a minute, that's exactly what I said about my Season 4 video. Well, yes, I've done this before for the first season. The reasons why that one feels strange is for a lot more subtle and maybe even just personal reasons. Season 1 is the same, however, there's also a lot more obvious reasons why this is off. Those of you who've watched me know that this has been a long time coming, because I've talked about this before. Early installment Weirdness was just straight up an entry in the middle of the Eddy Iceberg, and there were other entries in there talking about some small specific things, and in the bottom of that there was an entry about just how Quickshot Ed is a super off-putting, strange, unsettling, creepy episode, and I gave that its own whole entire video. So, with me talking about all of those things, it only makes sense that I finally speak about this topic in general, but much more extended. So, we're going to talk about what makes the early episodes of Eddy so weird. Now, the most obvious thing is the vibes of it. Let's talk about that, because that's what makes it. So, Season 1 is different from the rest of the series, which is as usual with shows, especially animated ones. Just about almost literally everyone is weird in Season 1. It feels different, it feels a lot more calm for basically every show that's lasted for over a season. Things are very calmed down. You can think of a lot of different things, and there's some very famous examples of this, and Eddy is no different. I know it's a very easy word to say, but Season 1 is chill. You can say that about The Simpsons and Gumball and SpongeBob and whatever else, but Season 1 of those shows are a lot more chill. What sets Eddy apart from these, though, is that you'll also hear a lot of people say that there are things in Season 1 that feel unsettling and off in like a kind of creepy or almost just like discomforting way. You won't really hear anybody say that about The Simpsons. At worst, you might say that some things in Season 1 are a bit uncanny, but not like creepy exactly. At least maybe I might think that, I don't know. So the most easy thing to notice where Season 1 is different, that even just like a casual viewer will know about, is the art style. Things are a lot more subdued, and it's a lot more like less in your face, and the more saturated and vibrant colors that would be used later on in the series. It's very bright in the later episodes, and overall I feel like this is kind of causes things to feel like that they always take place in the early morning, which I feel like adds to the chillness factor a lot. Like, if not early morning, it's at the very least that Season 1 always seems like it takes place, like, somewhere in between 6 and noon. Like, before noon, after 6 o'clock, just in that general vibes. Like, we're going to talk about this more at the end, but I feel like that just really sets the tone of Season 1. And something that you all know is that the houses in this are all just one color. The backgrounds are very simple compared to later on, where they look just as detailed as everything else. Double D's house at the start of the Ed Touchables, the first episode in particular, is the most easy, obvious thing to point out. This house is freaking weird, because the episode starts out with the most simple coloring you ever see, where it's just a circle over Double D's house, the color it's supposed to be. They didn't even try to fill it in normally, it's just a circle. However, then after, when you see him in charging the doorbell, the house is fully detailed, and then later on in the episodes, they're just the solid color, but, filled in the lines like you expect for the rest of that season. And also, I feel like the characters are also more prone to going off model. Like, I don't want to talk about Touchable so much because it is the first episode. You expect that one to be the weirdness, but there's that famous weird squinty face like Eddy makes, and I feel like the face is just getting played around with this more often, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like generally everybody's a lot more like rounded in the head, and say, like, I feel like it's the most noble of Ed, where it seems like his head just takes more, like, round shapes compared to the more long rectangular head that you usually know him for. Alright, so the next most noticeable thing are the voices. I've described this to friends before, how everybody talks in these early episodes like either they have a sore throat or they're not trying to wake up their parents. You know, this is very, very easy to see with all of the ads. Everybody's voice is just off in Season 1 compared to what it developed to later on, and they were more set on things, even if the voice actors didn't change for everyone, aside from, like, Naz. You know, it's very easy with Double D's raspiness and Eddy not being as screamy. If he is yelling, it's still a lot more chill and not straining, and you know, Ed especially just feels very, like, sad and weak sounding. It's kind of funny. You can especially hear it at the end of the credits, of all things, where he says the Ed thing. You know, it's not the big, bumbling, invincible oaf that we all know. And Eddy, I feel like, just generally feels more prone to throwing off these whoos and whoos, and you know, they would reuse those all the time in the later episodes, and they at least fit well, even with his voice change. And Kevin is a lot more soft-spoken and chill, especially, and Rolf is the most noticeable, with him almost just having a totally different voice that isn't just simply described as, like, more raspy or calmed down, which even for Jimmy, who's very different, you can say the same for. Rolf just generally seems to have, like, a more vague but more real sounding, just, like, kind of generally, like, Eastern European kid accent. He's a lot more Fievel-like, and not like Rolf afterwards, where, like, he talks with what just sounds like a made-up fictional accent, which fits where he's not really supposed to be from anywhere in particular. So, yeah, he's not the that we all know him for exactly just yet. Alright, now let's talk about more specific things in Season 1 that I feel like really sets in the early Installment weirdness, and especially the more creepy side potentially at the end. So, one weird thing I want to point out, which was probably just done for exposition's sake, but still worth pointing out, is Double D's name. I said this on the Iceberg, but the only time where I'm pretty sure anyone calls him just Ed, at least what I can remember it from, outside himself, is that the very beginning of the first episode, Untouchables, Eddy just calls him Ed. It's so weird to see. And then the next scene where they meet up with Ed, with 1D, he calls him Ed Double D. Like, it's his full name, not just Ed, not just Double D, Ed Double D. Like, again, I feel like that was, like, to set for the audience, like, hey, this is why he's just going to be referred to this as now on, without making it obvious. It's so weird, because, like, it's easy to miss him seeing that. Like, I didn't really notice it until, like, just before this that he says it, because it's during, like, a crazy scene that's moving all at once, and it's so odd. And right after that, in the same episode, when that happens, another thing that I point out on the Iceberg is a very infamous moment where Double D gets hard eyes to Sarah while talking to her. It's a bit weird, and, you know, it's a plot change where originally Double D had the crush on her, and then this changed just episodes later, where instead Sarah had the one-sided crush on Ed, with 2 Ds. Kevin, I talked about a bit already, is that he generally has a more calm, yet more mean attitude, where he's aggressive, but he's not super loud about it, almost if it's the weird-ass quick shot ad episode, as we talked about before. And something that I've seen other people point out is that in the series, something that's notable is that Kevin was usually always nicer to Double D when they weren't around the other Eds, which is a nice thing. But here in Season 1, he's still much more generally mean to Double D. And, you know, maybe call it early installment weirdness, or maybe you could see that as character development, where Kevin chilled out later on. This might be just coincidental, but I've noticed in Season 1 that they're very, very mean to Johnny. Now, I know that, like, they were throughout, like, the whole series, but they're, like, you could see it, and, you know, Johnny was annoying, and here was kind of, like, more funny when they were mean to him. Here, they're just mean to him for, like, no reason before Johnny even does anything. It's kind of upsetting to watch almost because it feels like a bit too much like a real bullying victim where they're just going after the weird kid who has no defense or friends. Like, they're mean to him in the Untouchables. There's at least kind of a reason given they're as extreme as it is. But then later when they're, like, building the clubhouse, they're just immediately after him, like, basically hold him hostage to help them get wood and shit and threaten plank, and it's fucked up. Okay, now for the thing that I feel like really leans in on why Season 1 can tend to feel, like, more unsettling and off, at least to me, is that something this show is very infamous for is that you don't see anybody outside of the main cast of characters ever, almost. You know, like, the adults aren't around most notably, and there aren't any other people. They stuck to this very strictly to the point where I feel like people don't really point out is that it got to the point where you don't even really see, like, pictures of other people, or drawings of other people, or even really drawings of, like, alternate versions of them, and as in, like, the main characters. And they only chilled out a bit on this, like, later on in the series, and that includes other animals, too. You would rarely see other animals, and if you did, it was just some, like, bug or small wild animal, outside of Ralph's animals, obviously. So yeah, that's something that they were leaning on later on in the series, and especially the movie, obviously. But Season 1, they were also more lenient on this in a different way, whereas I feel like you would see more pictures of other people. Like, in the Prankster episode, which I feel like a lot of people talked about before, is one that makes them feel off outside of Quickshot, because I got a lot of comments on that one in the video where I talk about that episode. And, like, in there, you see, like, the Joker cards, and just, like, a drawing of, like, a Joker guy on there, and that's weird to see in the episode, and, you know, I feel like that's kind of why it's weird in Quickshot Ed, where you see, like, the weird image of the chimpanzee, or whatever it is, and yeah, there's also the dog that attacks Double D. Like, that's just a straight-up, like, other pet. Like, whose dog is that? I mean, there was also a different dog in one of the promos, infamously, that I believe was meant to be Sarah's, and that never got anywhere, because you can tell that they didn't really want, like, even show pets too often, and yeah, it's very, very, like, strange now when you get to see it, and what I meant by, like, alternate versions of the characters is that a scene that always made me feel really weird as a little kid was when they meet the Cankers, and there's that drawing of Eddy as an adult marrying Lee. There's just something about that drawing that looks so fucking weird and made me feel so odd seeing it as a kid. I don't know if, like, disturbed or creeped out is the right word exactly. Like, I definitely don't think the latter is, but I don't know. This drawing made me feel something, and I love this drawing now. So, yeah, I feel like that kind of explains why Season 1 is so odd, yet it's also very calm. Season 4, I described as feeling like it takes place at the end of summer, things just feeling a bit more off and kind of, like, anxious in a way. Season 1, however, I feel like takes place very clearly at the start of a summer break. Because, you know, I described before how everything's a lot more calm yet. Like, they haven't gone full crazy yet. They're just getting into the swing of things. And I feel like that very easily encapsulates, like, how one might feel, like, once they're finally, like, getting off of school. You're not full-blown energy off the way because of excitement or something, but you might calm down a bit because summer's only just started. It's not completely aggressively hot out all day, every day yet. No, it might still be just, like, a little bit lukewarm in the mornings and stuff, and the coloring and feel and tone of Season 1 just really captures that. Like, especially as I said, it often feels like it takes place, like, early morning. Like, something about Season 1 especially just makes me feel like, you know, vibes of me back then, like, playing Ocarina of Time in the morning before then, doing other things once the day woke up a bit more. You know, that's kind of a thing that I feel like makes it feel pretty comfortable, is that even if things aren't, like, top peak shape yet, you know it's coming, and it's something to really look forward to, which pays off in the next couple of seasons after this. And, you know, Season 1, that's why I feel like it feels really special, and that's why you gotta love it for just how weird it is, even if it can spook you a bit, but things do get better.